This is a Channel Africa podcast. You can also get Channel Africa on satellite, PAS10, DSTV Audio Bouquet 802, and OpenView Bouquet, Channel 628.
Now, before the adoption of by the Executive Council, how did the civil society organizations interface with the African Union?
Yeah, thank you very much once again. Historically, engagement by the African Union and organs of the African Union with civil society organizations over the years has been on an ad hoc basis. Not until the Executive Council mandated ECOSOCC to develop three critical frameworks. And these critical frameworks are Harmonized Accreditation Mechanism, which basically facilitates the granting of observer and consultative status to civil society organization. The second framework is the ECOSOCC National Chapter Framework, which helps to guide implementation and popularization of AU programs and policies at the constituency level, but more fundamentally create a bridge to provide feedback, like a feedback mechanism on how we can get perspectives from citizens on issues that affect the lives of citizens at the grassroots level. And then the last framework is a Diaspora legal framework, which is basically to guide engagement with members of the African diaspora. So in response to your question, it was basically on an ad hoc basis. There were no institutional mechanism. So it simply means you can call any organization without necessarily understanding the value addition or the technical competencies of this organization in contributing into the African Union programs and policies.
And let's talk about this year's theme of justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. Now, talk to us about this theme and how it all came about.
Yes, so the African Union, through its 2025 theme of the year, Justice for Africans and People for African Descent, as you rightly said, this team have sent a clear message beyond borders that the struggle for historical redress and restitution is not a distant dream, but a crucial priority for the continent. When we look at the theme, this is basically to acknowledge centuries of the long struggles of affected communities. It is, to me, a declaration that the pain endured, lands and artifacts that were stolen, and even the culture that was erased, and the dignity that were taken away or stripped away through the brutal histories of slavery, colonialism, and systemic injustice will no longer be ignored. So the African Union heads of state have actually pronounced themselves to say it is high time that we walk the path to reparative justice, which will not only be an easy journey for us. There will be those who will definitely put resistance to it. There will be those who will think that what we are doing does not make sense. There will be those who will say it is impractical. But one thing which is certain, we're on the right side of history, truth and justice. And there's need for us to be able to demand for a reparation. And when we talk about reparation, we are not only looking at financial aspect, even the aspect of acknowledgement of the wrong that was done to Africans centuries ago. And in fact, when you look at our current contemporary society, we still continue to be taken advantage of. And that is the reason why we are talking about even a fair and a balanced multilateral system. We have seen multinational corporations that are involved in extractive industry, the total disregard for communities and the manner at which community lands have been seriously destroyed, and the climate emission and all those things that affect society. So this is a reaffirmation of our collective commitment to justice and a turning point in the global fight for reparation for Africa.
Now, just going back and touching on reparations, but on the financial side of reparations, because you find that a lot of times there will be some figures that will be attached to any decision or reparations agreement. Will there be timeframes added to reparations agreements or discussions to ensure that the people who are being redressed and going through that process, whether acknowledgement or financial reparations, know exactly when things will turn around for them, or for instance families who've lost loved ones in war, when they will be given, whether it's a month or 3 months, 3 years or so on, because it does tend to, especially when it comes to the financial side of things, it does tend to become overshadowed, and we never find out whether it has happened or not.
I think the first thing we need to understand that when we talk about reparation and the struggle for reparation, we are looking at a global movement. This is about a movement. And when we talk about a movement, it's all inclusive. So it's not, every Africans in the continent and those who are out of the continent were affected as a result of colonialism, the enslavement during the transatlantic slave trade. So the movement and the theme of the year is actually there will be launch of the roadmap, which will clearly indicate what are some of the benchmark and critical aspects that the focus on reparation advocacy and agenda will look into. So beyond the financial aspect, we are talking about restitution of artifact, like I was saying, stolen artifact, even the dignity, and the culture. Even you look at our contemporary society and the fact that Africa is where we are today in the financial system. These are all as a result of what we went through. So timeline for us, it's not only for 2025. The African Union has been asked to develop an African common position. And I think the African common position will be able to map out exactly what Africans want and the aspect of a unified voice that we need to come out with to be able to demand for reparation. So it's a global movement. And I think the demand for reparation, we also conscious of the fact that it's not going to be an easy fight. We have seen the manner at which people have been brushing it off. But I think the self-awareness and the consciousness of African is the first step for us to be able to say we need to repair for the damage that have been caused on Africa. Even self-repair is very critical. So I will not be able to say any critical timeline, but what is clear, there is a clear roadmap which is attached to the concept note that will be launched by heads of state tomorrow and next tomorrow, one of those days. And then we will have clarity in terms of what Africa wants, when, how, and where.
And just looking, William, at some examples that we do have on the African continent, for instance, is the case in Ghana. One of the big issues that were brought to the fore was the fact that the museums in the United Kingdom, who then returned these artifacts to the kingdom in Ghana, were the key words used then was the fact that it is out on loan to the original owners of these artifacts, and that becomes a bit tricky. How do we address that, and how, as I guess it is part of the plan to address such issues where the original owners that get loaned artifacts that belong to them as a kingdom in Ghana, and then also we saw Germany, giving financial payments, redress to Namibia. So these are good examples of what some African countries have had to go through to get what belongs to them.
Oh yes, you're right, and that is the reason why we are talking about restitution of these artifacts. In an African context, in fact, some of these artifacts, you will agree with me, they are not just ordinary artifacts. In a typical traditional setting, some of them were gods. Some of them, it means something more than just artifact. It's our cultural identity. It means a lot. It depicts who we are. So for it to be taken away from the people, it's something that we demand for. And that is the reason why restitution is one of the critical aspects of this particular struggle and the particular movement that we are fighting for reparation. So it's an ongoing advocacy. There are many organizations, like you mentioned, the Landless People Movement in Namibia, and many other organizations that have been working on this aspect of reparation. So I think what the AU will get out of this, through the African Common Position and the ongoing advocacy, and even the expert committees that we've been requested to form, that will work on a comprehensive approach towards reparation, that we look at every aspect of the reparation agenda so that we address this issue once and for all.
That podcast was courtesy of Channel Africa, the African Perspective.